I hope you had a nice weekend. We are time traveling as always from Spain to the US right now. For me, it's 5 p.m. now. What time is it for you right now, Sanford?
It's 11 a.m.
11, 6, 6. So that's Eastern, that's 6 hours
Eastern.
after Spain. Um, People, before we start, as always, wear your mask, be decent. We're still vaccinating, we're still not out of the pandemic. Or
Right.
said in a less polite way, wear your fucking mask. I've been saying it for 2 months, so I have to do it. So,
It should
how
be
are you,
a
Sanford?
shirt.
How's things?
Um, Things are well. Very busy. Having a very productive year, which is somewhat of an anomaly considering all of the insanity that has happened that has taken place in the last 12 months. But doing pretty good. Like I said, this very busy.
Mhm.
Working on Bitterroot and there's a few other projects and stuff. But family's good. As long as they're good, we're starting to get our vaccinations in here really soon. So that's a good thing. So yeah, just trying to maintain.
Mhm. So you haven't been vaccinated yet?
I haven't been, no, but my wife has.
Hmm.
I honestly was waiting on trying to uh, get through these insane deadlines.
Hmm.
I just didn't want to have any take any chances if I with the vaccination and it turns out to be something where I have to take a day off or something like that. So
Yeah, they say that this. I haven't been vaccinated yet, but they say that the second shot, leaves you for like one day, at least
mm,
one day, that you need to fall flat.
right, and yeah. So I just want to make sure that I have a clear, not a clear path because it's just never going to be clear, but at least not as insane as it is right now.
Mhm. Is
Right.
there? Let me say this way. Imagine my name is Victor Frankenstein. I'm your doctor. I'm going to vaccinate you right now with this Rotring pen because I don't have anything else. So
Okay.
magic, magic, boom, that's it.
Boom.
Um, that what's the thing that you've been missing the most for the last, I don't know, 14 months already? That you've been, the moment they release you into the wild, as the pigs we all are, they just let us go and do whatever we want. What's the first thing you could do?
Oh well. Um, the first thing that I will do, man, I tell you what. Um, this might sound a little, hokey, but if once we're clear, I would love to just go on a nice vacation to where it's not any kind of, you don't feel odd when you
Hmm.
see a bunch of people. Um, I'm just in that stage right now where I'm still very cautious about crowds and things of that nature. So just being able to go out with family and friends and, to a nice concert, um, that would be awesome.
Hmm.
Um, actually going into a crowded movie theater would be kind of cool to watch one of the greatest, one of the great, hero films or whatever.
Hmm.
Simple stuff, honestly. I think someone said on your show, I watch your show a lot, but someone said something about how we don't realize what we have until it's gone. Something as simple as a movie theater,
Yeah.
things of that nature. You don't have that. Actually, our movie theater closed down. It's right down the street from me, and it was so awesome that I could just 5 minutes away go down to um, the theater with friends and watch everything on the high def IMAX screens, and it closed down. So we're definitely missing that stuff.
Is it opening back again now, or is just for good?
I don't know. I think the thing that's really hard is that there's not a lot of what's the word? Priority. It's not a priority. right? So I don't know what the plan is right now for it, but we're hoping, I don't know, by the end of the year we might see some changes.
Yeah, movie theaters opened here, I would say, a month already.
Okay.
A month ago, and they were
Oh,
open during the summer, and
okay.
it works so well with the security they have, with the algorithms and the seals around you. I went to watch a couple movies, and when they opened back after the first wave in August, I went to watch Tenet and Scooby Doo. Not because I wanted to watch Scooby Doo, but I have a 6-year-old.
Oh, okay, right,
7 now, and you just have to do it. It was part of the deal, So, and the system they had in place, every time I don't know about there, but every time I'm asked about movies here, I tell them, they're so safe the way it's planned, because I select a seat on the theater, and automatically the program does that. Front of me, my back, my left, my right, nobody can sit around.
Okay.
So you have a seal everywhere that keeps the distance in all directions.
Sure.
And if it's two people, same thing. The person on the right, the person on the left, the front, the back. There's always separation. So that feels really safe. And of course, you have to take a jacket, because now the air conditioning is like 120%.
Yeah, you don't have the crowd, right?
All the time. No, and also because of COVID, they want to renew the air more. So at the same time, they have a really strong air conditioning and the separation. So, you need a jacket. It's like, go to the cinema, feel safe, wear a jacket, because you're probably going to get cold.
So in other words, it's probably good, at least for me, because I really hate, air conditioning is blasted that high. I hate that in the movie theater. I don't want it hot either, but I wouldn't have enjoyed that experience at all.
To be honest, after the first 5 minutes, you don't notice it. It's that at the beginning you're not used to feel. When you sit down, you feel it, the room, the theater. You feel it cold, and you realize, that's because the air conditioning, is high, because they need to renew the air. But after 5 minutes, you just don't notice it. It's not. There's no noise. It's just that you get into the movie and you forget about it.
Right. I guess the other thing too is what movie would you said Scooby Doo is like, I have no interest in.
No. I had to look. In my case, I went to watch Scooby Doo. Oh my God, that's a bad movie from people who doesn't understand Scooby Doo. But anyway, Scooby Doo, I just watched it because it was like, my wife went to watch Tenet on her own, and the deal was, okay, I'm taking the kid to watch Scooby Doo, and then next week you take care of her, and I want to watch Tenet on my own. So and we have a theater, as you said, 5 minutes literally there, like you did. So we're like, we made that deal. That's the only reason. Believe me, I didn't want to go Scooby Doo because I wanted to watch Scooby Doo.
Right. Yeah. There's nothing really out right now that would.
You don't want to watch Godzilla versus Kong.
That's a whole nother discussion right there, man. Seeing Godzilla fight Kong was great, but that's it. That's all I have.
Did you watch it at home, or you watch it in the theater? You watch it at home?
I watched it at home.
I cannot. That movie with the monsters. I mean, my wife and I discussed it. Hey, why don't we have 55-inch TV and all that at home? And I was like, no, it's fucking Godzilla versus Kong. I'm not gonna watch it at home.
I wanted to, but again, the theater that was down the street from me closed, and that was a really good theater, which is really disappointing. So the closest theater to me was about 25 minutes away from that point, which once I'm in, you finish, work for the day, just kind of So
it's like, especially in this situation, when this COVID, then in my case, because we have it very near. If not, as you just said, you have to go 25 minutes away to watch a movie, and you're like, you know what? No, not now, not in this situation. It's not the time to take any risk, right?
Right. And again, there's nothing really out there that I would actually want to see at this point. I'm actually I'm looking forward to what
Please don't tell me are you not dying to watch Mortal Kombat?
again. That's
I am not.
Have you seen it yet?
No, I have
No.
not, and I think I don't have an intention to.
Well, you're better. You're better than I was. I made a decision to watch it on the screen at home, and it was I still felt cheated even after.
Is it worse than the old one?
It's kind of hard to say because hindsight, you look at the old ones and you're like, wow, this was really cheesy, corny, whatever you want to call it. But in that moment, at that time, it's kind of like Big Trouble in Little China.
Mm-hmm.
When as a kid, that was like incredible, and we know that Big Trouble, Mortal Kombat was inspired by Big Trouble in Little China, or at least some of the designs. But you see that, so your nostalgia sees it as, oh, this was an incredible film, until you watch it again with adult eyes, and you're like, oh wow. you wish that you never, you just don't want to spoil so it's hard to say right now that it's worse than those, because the nostalgia of Mortal Kombat, I can that's the fondness of it. I'm like, oh yeah, those were bad, but I was young, and that was the first of the action fantasy films,
And what's the movie that is going to make you want to come back to theaters of the ones that are going to come during this year, if any?
I mean, the Black Widow looks awesome, but that's honestly, I don't know. And I think it's one of those things where I've felt pretty good about my experience so far at home. Malcolm and Winter Soldier were really good, and I like the experience of being at home. As a matter of fact, we have in my garage, we set up a projector.
My, okay.
Yes, so we can do stuff like that, which kind of, I mean, if you really think about it, that's why we go to the movies with our friends. As long as I'm with my friends, it doesn't matter where it is.
True.
That's what makes the experience for me great. I think some folks, they can watch a film by themselves in the theater alone, big screen. I don't know. That never really fancied me. I just like going to watch it with friends and having a discussion about it afterwards. That's always the fun part. And to some degree, we still do that, even though we may not be together. Once I saw Falcon and Winter Soldier, I immediately got on Zoom with friends and started talking about it. So it was kind of like, all right, this isn't that bad.
What's your favorite of the Marvel ones?
Probably Captain America, Winter Soldier was good, and what's the third one? Civil War, and then Black Panther. Probably those three. Yeah, those three. They were the most.
And what did you think of Zack Snyder's Justice League?
Honestly, it wasn't bad. This is what made it. It was. There was a lot happening in that film. It's funny, you mentioned 3 films already that were movie theater quality films that were good. King Kong, Mortal Kombat, Justice League. It's rough. I mean, but the saving grace is maybe that's kind of a blessing in disguise that we got to watch them from home instead of spending, well, you know, you're spending money regardless, but sometimes you feel like when you go through all of the process of traveling, getting to the theater, sitting crowds around, and then you watch a bad movie, you just feel cheated. And I just,
absolutely.
you know, I didn't feel cheated, that's for sure, with any of these, except for Mortal Kombat. I felt cheated.
so the bar, Justice League is in the bar, Kong is in the bar, Mortal Kombat is below the bar of being home, and even there you feel cheated. Oh my God!
There, it was just, oh man, I could go on about that thing. There was a character in there that was like, why is this character? There was actually about 3 characters that was just worthless. It's sad if it's one, but when you got 3 characters that was completely worthless, I don't know. It's definitely not. Enter at your own risk. That's the best. Yeah.
Let's go with comics. Why of all the chances you had in life, you know, as an artist, did you decide to go for the most masochistic one, which is doing comics?
Because right behind me is the reason why. I went to I'm sure you've heard of Kmart. You guys don't have those markets there, but when I was a kid, my mom would take me to go shopping. It was kind of like the outing for the family. We didn't have a lot of money, so when it was time to do shopping, I would go with her sometimes. And one day I saw from the distance this magazine rack, spinner rack, and it had comics on it. Well, I didn't realize there were comics, but I saw Superman at the header of the spinner rack, so I recognized that from the cartoons, and so I got excited, and I went over and started to spin the rack. And my mom, she noticed that I was like really into it, excited to, you know, she was like, "Wow, you're really into this thing." She said, "I'll tell you what, I'll leave you here. I'll go shopping and come back." That was back in the days that you could leave your kids anywhere. and you know that they're going to be okay because they're coming back. You know, they're in an arcade or, you know. So she came back and I was still there. And this was during those times when we had this 3-pack, and that was pretty crazy because I couldn't see the middle comic in those 3-packs. You know, pulling to try to see what's there. But she saw how I was on track, and she said, "You know what? I'll just buy it because you're going to tear the thing as long as you read them." And I said, "Okay." And that was where the addiction began. I started drawing from them because I would try to draw from comics. From cartoons. Of course, they're in motion. It was impossible to do. I didn't have a VCR, so all I could do was just sit and try to memorize what the characters look like and the poses. And then I got these comics now that, wait a minute, they're all still images. I can draw from them. So I would just go from cover to cover, trying to, you know, draw what I saw in the comics. And that just took me. I was already drawing. Draw stuff like, I don't know, my Hot Wheel cars. I would draw that. I would draw my sneakers. That was a big thing, you know, for kids back then. Draw your favorite sneaker and design it. But now I got these comics, so I can draw endless hours of just entertainment. I could always keep myself entertained. Back then, I didn't need video games per se, though I had them. The comics kept me the most occupied, so that's where it all started.
And why do you keep coming back?
Because I'm trying to tap into that inner child, that 10-year-old that went to the spinner rack and saw for the first time these comics, and I'm trying to find that euphoria that I found then, and I'm still chasing that. I guess I'm a tortured soul, as we all are, because I think we're all trying to find that. We're all trying.
You're an artist. You have to be. You have to be.
You have to be. And then to do it, it's one thing to do it as a fan, and you do it casually, but now you have responsibilities for it. It's part of your occupation. It's part of your livelihood. So that brings even more pressure, if you will, in intention to what you do, because now it's for commerce. And it's also in the eyes of thousands, practically, and they are literally you're at the mercy of all of them on some level, and it's even more intense now that we have social media, right? It's like multiply that by 1 million. So you post art, and either people like it or they don't, and so it is definitely. I don't feel bad, or not necessarily bad. I don't feel overwhelmed by that as much as I am about just trying to meet a deadline.
Mm-hmm.
If that, I don't necessarily care about the outskirts or the peripheral things. It's just the deadlines, because that's what's going to keep me employed. It's going to keep other folks employed. It's just my mindset has changed completely over the last 10, 12 years, 15 years of doing this. Mm-hmm. So, and at the end of the day, like I said, we all, love to just do something that's kind of cool that we can look at and go, wow, that was awesome. That was very fulfilling, artistically, creatively, whatever, that could be a bit torturous, right? You're creating something and you're trying to do it to appease yourself, but you also want everyone else to, because if you like it, you hope everyone else would like it as well.
Absolutely. How much of an urge to tell stories is what made you decide to do comics above, I don't know, illustration, for example?
Can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
No, absolutely. Yes, it was a weird question. I know. How much there's always a decision there as a creator, which is, what's more important to you? Is the storytelling part? Is the telling stories part? Or is to just do a beautiful image that in a way also tells a story, but it's a simple image? Why did you decide on that part? Make the bigger part of your career the interiors, the storytelling part. And the question was, is that mostly because of the urge to tell stories, the need to tell stories?
Mm-hmm. I think when I first started, I didn't have the education of storytelling. I just had the limited education of, I saw your dog. He was creeping up slowly.
My legs.
Yeah.
Please go.
But when I didn't have the education of storytelling when I was breaking in, and very few of us did. Most folks, at least from my era, we came in I call it the Joe Matter era. Like when we were coming up and we were trying to figure out whether we wanted to make this a career or just be a fan. I was a fan, obviously, and right before Joe Madureira, there was the Jim Lees and the Todd McFarlanes and artists of that nature. So we, the first thing that we saw was the art, or the style, I should say, not even necessarily the art. We saw the style. Looking back on it, I realized that's what it was, and that was our education. At least, initially, that was the education. You saw the style, and you connected with the style. Most creators from that time, looking back at the work, there was nothing to our work but the style. We learned as we went along, and as I went along, I understood that the style is fleeting. It's gonna come and go, and I knew that I had to understand and become educated on the substance, or else you're going to be gone. Because there's a lot of, if you look at a lot of the comics from that era, they're not even around anymore. Not necessarily artists, some artists, but that look and style is not even a thing anymore. And it's a pendulum. It swings from one to the end to the other. But I know for me, it was a quick, hard lesson of you have to have some substance to this stuff, or else you're gonna be, you're gonna bounce out of this thing pretty quick. So I started trying to understand that, and it's funny how when you understand style, you can I'm sorry, when you start to understand story, you can be so engulfed in story that you lose this thing that was kind of unique to your work to begin with, the style. And so I went from one end to the other. I went from this super stylistic stuff with no real substance to more grounded storytelling, and now it's not exciting. It's kind of flat, boring, or stiff, whatever you want to call it. So I had to find some balance between both of those two. So it's one of those things. If I could rewind my whole career, it would be to have some form of education, art education, where I understood story at the very beginning, because the style was just kind of there anyway. But if I had the story part, then I would have gotten to a certain place to where I could handle both sooner. But again, I don't have any regrets or anything. It's just that I know that as I look at a lot of the young, artists coming up now, I see a lot of where they have a pretty great advantage of, there's education all around them. There's academic understanding all around them. Programs online, YouTube, or whatever that they can just tap into. We had none of that. It was the comics. That was it.
And would you return, if you were given the chance, to return back in time to redo any of those works? Would you do it, or is just part of the experience, part of the learning, part of creating a toolbox? So it's better that it stays that way.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I look back every blue moon. I would open up something that I did from back then, and I would cringe, but at the same time, I would go, wait a minute, that was something interesting there. So it's a little bit of both. So sometimes I would look back at certain things and try to pull from what I was doing then, because it was some raw, kinetic kind of thing that was happening that I didn't understand. And I would look back at it to try to see, okay, maybe I can break it down into some type of tangible, assets that I can put into my work now.
But that's always the fight, right? This trying to distill that raw energy. That brings me to another question. Sorry to interrupt. Is how much do you fight to keep the raw energy of your layouts and not lose it in the finals? How much, how torturous is the fight to achieve that?
Well, it goes back to what I said earlier. It was like
Mhm.
once I started to understand things like storytelling, and now I'm so concerned about that whatever I did in those, it wasn't. I didn't pay as much attention to it, and the final product would come out, and it's like, oh wow, this is okay. There's the substance is there, but what happened to the energy? I'm looking at the sketches and or the layouts or whatever, and there's so much there. And now that's when it dawned on me. Wait a minute, I went too far to the right. I need to go back.
Tune it down. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was me just figuring things out, and I'll tell you, it really changed once I started to ink myself. That's when I really started to understand it. This was back, oh gosh, about 6-7 years ago when I was like working on, maybe even a little earlier. It's interesting. Like a lot of the folks that I mentioned, or at least that school of folks that came in around the time I did, we all kind of had the same influences: the anime, manga, cartooning kind of aspect. Again, didn't really fully understand it. We just saw style and we gravitated towards that. And I think many of us, we all went through something similar that I'm talking about, where we had to figure out how do we stay with what was true to us, what was the rawness that we connected with, and then grow as an artist with more substance. And we all went through it. And I think we all, well, not all of us, but most of us started to understand roughly around the same time that we have to become cartoonists, not just comic book illustrators, because, you know, like, especially in your neck of the woods, that's what is kind of that's the foundation. That's the standard, is to be cartoonists. You're the artist. You draw, ink, maybe even color your works. You do the whole thing, because you can connect with every aspect of that, right? It's like in the States, we're literally trying to put our brain to the next person's brain, the inker. Like ink the way that I draw, that's, you know, that might work, that might not work. Most of the time it doesn't work. Especially with, you know, more so with what we do with the more stylistic things. Paul Pope was the first person that made me start to understand that, you know what, you need to not be afraid to just try this inking thing yourself, because his works weren't the commercialized works, but they were still brilliant works. They weren't the books that you saw at the top of the comic book racks or whatever, but those are the books that I would hunt down and try to study. And I started realizing that there were other artists kind of realizing the same thing, and they kind of used folks like him and a few others that they were doing this long before during the times of the Image guys. He was tapping into that approach. So once we started to understand, I say we, but you know, because I noticed it was several folks that was doing the same thing, I realized, wait a minute, so I'm not off. I thought I was like, oh man, you're so conscious about who's inking you, who's not inking you, or what your art looks like after it's completed, you know, with inks or whatever. Just do it yourself. Don't do it yourself, because no one does it themselves. And then I discovered Paul Pope, and then I started realizing other folks were discovering people like him, and I knew that I was on a pretty good path.
And that it is how much of your own personality is in those things. I mean, the moment you started thinking, how much did that push you to find your own personal style or your voice, if you want to call it like that?
Yeah. It honestly, it was there. It goes back to what I said a minute ago. I would go back and look at some of my first works when I started inking myself. It was so raw and so just it was it was a lot of insanity, but kind of sifting through that stuff, it was like, oh, huh, okay. You were doing stuff that is kind of what is the norm now, but you didn't know it. You didn't understand it. You just kind of did it. Trial by error, I guess. But I'm even today still refining what I do. I'm excited about even using. I was using traditional brush,
Mm-hmm.
but now there's the brush pens. There's certain ones that I'm excited about that gives a little more control. I mean, you can get control with anything if you use it enough, but yeah, I'm refining every day, uh, getting into spaces. In certain styles or certain places I would go, I would ink a little more free, loose with certain stories. If I'm doing something a little more commercial, it's a lot cleaner or tighter. So just learning that I can't, just one size fits all. I had to be a little diverse in this just to connect, but still stay true to myself.
But that's very interesting. That means you've found a way to keep your own voice visible, but at the same time to adapt it to the needs of the project, right? It's going to be
Right,
you, but this it's not the same you that does Bitterroot that does maybe a cover some other character or something like that, right?
right, right. Yeah, and I think that's the other part of it too. I come from, again, because of the era that I came up in, um, whereas stylistically, you were influenced by the anime, cartooning, if you will. It may not have gotten us, gotten me opportunities to work on super mainstream titles immediately. Um, it did grab the attention of animation.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I went into animation, gosh, for pretty immediately. And so I started doing animation, working for Warner Brothers and Sony, uh, doing a lot of design work, and because of that, um, it was funny. It was like, okay, I'm not. It's not necessarily getting me a ton of opportunities in the industry, comic industry, but it's getting me a lot of opportunities in this animation. So where should I go? So I was at a crossroads for a while. I think around 2007, 8, 9, somewhere around there.
Mm-hmm.
2007 to 2010, I was in a place where I was trying to get. I thought I was going to go into animation, so I pretty much just kind of put all my eggs in that basket. Um, and then, like you said earlier, this comic thing kept calling me back. The stories opportunities that I wanted to be a part of. I started working at Marvel doing Spider-Man adventures, and that started to grow and started growing from there. And I ended up staying in comics. I was going to go to animation. I was certain of it, but and I still, oddly enough, I still do a lot of animation, a lot of concept work for animation. But once I understood how to create a space that I could work in both fields
Mm-hmm.
and not feel like, oh, just because I'm drawing or illustrating in a cartoony style. Because honestly, the brushwork is, if you strip it away, it's all cartoon.
Mm-hmm.
It's very cartoony. You look at someone like again, Paul Pope. If you just strip away his brushwork. It's very again, it goes back to how the European artists, the cartoonists, and so just tapping into that more, and then realizing I can stay true in both arenas. Brush work in comics, but then take that same style in animation and not use the brush. It's the same drawing. It's just not brush, you know. So
how much of a reason to stay in comics was the fact that when you're doing animation, of course, you're part of a much bigger machine. But in comics, alongside with with their colorists, if you use one, inker if you use one, the writer, of course, you are the writer, director, DP, producer. Decide on the budget, which is basically your deadlines and the time you want to spend on each page, etc. How much of a decision making to stay in comics was that freedom to be your own master and decider on the stuff you want to do instead of responding to a much bigger machine?
So what we're talking about is when I didn't understand any of that until I started working on Bitterroot. I was offered opportunities from various publishers. Dark Horse wanted me to do something creator-owned a few years before, and I turned it down because I just felt like I want to draw the Hulk. I want to draw. I mean, it goes back to that nostalgia that we spoke of earlier. I grew up wanting to be a comic book artist for Marvel. It's a different era. It's just a totally different era. The kids today, it's that I doubt if it's even on some of their radars. Like I teach this this class for like high level illustrators, artists, students, and I have 13 students there. Only 2 of them want to do comics. Everyone else wants to draw just illustrations or go into animation. And so my mentality back then was the total opposite. It's like comics or bust, and that was everyone, obviously. And I didn't I didn't understand the power of creator-owned until I got on Bitterroot. That's when it really hit me. But there is something to be said when you can scratch the itch, right? If you can get to do your character, you can, my character was Luke Cage, Power Man. I got a chance to do that, and I felt fulfilled. I felt like I did something. I got to achieve something. And once I did that, I felt like, okay, I can go off and do my own thing now. But honestly, once I did it and saw what it created for me and the opportunities that came from it, I'm like, why didn't I do this sooner? So it's just kind of like, oh my gosh. So,
but in a way, that's because, as you said before, I think you've always been taught that the objective, the main goal was to do the Marvel or the DC characters, right? It's not like today where people, when they start to do comics, they are already thinking about when am I going to do my own creator-owned, right? They use it, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing. They use the work for hire as the door to create their own world later in life, right?
Yeah. I like the path that I was on. I look at a lot of YouTube. Obviously, when you have all this time occupied, you got to occupy your brain for something. I try to do some useful YouTubing. I go back and I look at a lot of comic history documentaries or interviews or what have you, and there's 2 things that I get from most of those. One, we came up in a great era because that was the the Jim Lee, Todd McFarlane era,
Mm-hmm.
and they were our, fathers, if you will,
Forefathers.
forefathers, whatever. And the Joe Mads were like the big brothers kind of thing.
Yep.
And that is the zeitgeist today, right? So you can really appreciate, a Rob Liefeld even more, as much as I appreciated him then. But knowing that, those are our, forefathers, it does make you feel like, man, you're a part of it, because everything that is being produced and created came from our childhoods. That's what's happening right. That's the zeitgeist. So we're in a good place. People for the first time, like I call them civilians, the normal folks, they understand what I do more than ever now.
Mm-hmm.
I get opportunities, not opportunities. I have conversations with, I don't know, people that knew me for years, and they would always ask me, "So how's it going, man, with whatever?" And it's like, wow, it didn't take me having to explain to you a million times what I do for a living, because that's the zeitgeist now. It's
Yep.
we're the cool kids now, right? It's like everything is what we do. So we're
Well,
taking it.
in a way, pop culture is us, right? Right now.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much. I can't even begin to tell you the inquiries that I've received over the last year.
Mm-hmm.
Some of these things you'll start to see here shortly, but it's part of it is part of it is what we just spoke about, but it's
Mm-hmm.
also, I think, the climate, the social climate, the political climate, all those things are happening along with this.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool. I mean, well, you don't want. It's almost kind of like it's like it's like a butterfly before it becomes a butterfly. The chrysalis stage. It's like
Yeah.
kind of nasty looking, but it blooms into something pretty awesome, and I think we're going through that stage now as a people, as creative people, as a society, all those things.
Mm-hmm. How much do you miss the safety net that work for hire work gives you when you're doing career own? And I mean safety net, like, you know what, you're going to draw Batman, you know how Gotham City looks, or how the limits for Spider-Man, where you can't go, and where is the safety area where the fans are always going to love one of those shots. But when you're doing Bitterroot or any other creator own, is your world body. So in a way, there's open, everything is open, but in another way, there's no safety net. So do you miss the safety net at all, or do you just crave for it and you're like, no, this is what I want?
You know what's interesting? I've created a safety net for myself because I'm doing creator own. I have, I don't know, 5 projects at once. My safety net is just keep the projects rotating. That's the safety net.
Mm-hmm.
And that way it allows the creator own, like you said, to flourish. It should, you would hope it would flourish
Mm-hmm.
during that time, because you have the confidence or the security of other sources of income. And something that it may have been Rick Remender told me a long time ago. He was one of the guys that was trying to get me to do this thing, creator own thing, for a long time. And he said, you have to. It's one of those things where the sacrifice is always going to be worth it. Like, if you put in the work, the return comes to you. It just does. You have to trust it, though. it's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when. And I just never really trusted that because of that fear of the safety net. There's no safety net. What if it fails? So no, it won't fail, because if you put in the work, it will return. Now, again, we kind of fell in this perfect storm, if you will, over the last few years, where all of this stuff that we do is the zeitgeist. So everybody wants it. So we're in a kind of resurgence of another a resurgence of what took place 25 years ago with Image or whatever, right? But it's a different. It looks different now. It's more of it's honestly the stuff that Image was aspiring to do. They weren't looking just to sell a million comics. They wanted to make movies and animation and of course the toys, the games. They wanted to do all that stuff. Now it's literally, you just have to create something and the right person sees it, and it's going to end up being that on some level, something, So yeah, my biggest thing is just to continue to keep keep the plate spinning, and now that the biggest plate, which is the creator owned stuff, is established, because it is a thing where literally, because of what we did and what we're doing with Bitterroot, the door is wide open now for other stuff. They want other stuff. People want to see other stuff, and that's what I know I'm working on. I spoke to a few other creators in the industry. They're all thinking that way, because that's our, going back to what you said about security, that's our 401k. If we do it the right way, it's just there. If we do it the right way. So that's my plan.
And also, what I meant also about the safety net was that, of course, but also the second part, which is every morning when you wake up and you draw a Spider-Man, you know the tropes. But with Bitterroot, there's no tropes.
Right.
Everything is there where you create. So that's the second safety net, right? From an artistic point of view. So how much do you have to change the brain muscles you use in work for hire and in your own stuff?
Yeah. I don't even necessarily call those safety nets. I call them, I think most creative people would call that
constraints,
chains.
That was the answer I was expecting.
And because that's someone else's toys, that's someone else's sandbox. I mean, you hear that cliche all the time. And yes, it is cool to draw Wolverine, but I can't have Wolverine. There's certain things that Wolverine can't do anymore. He can't have a stogie anymore. He can't have a cigar.
Yeah.
I think that's right. In
the whole Marvel universe, in the comics, nobody can have a cigar.
Not that, and it's not that I don't really care if he can have it or not. But I'm just saying that's just one thing. What if someone, that's how they envision him, and they want to create him in a scene with a stogie or something? They can't do that. I'm not saying that I would want to do that. I'm just saying that's kind of what that it's just an illustration to point out how that those things are literally someone else's. But in my universe, I could do that, and there's no problem, or whatever. There's that total freedom and autonomy from everything in someone else's toy box. So yeah, it's just I'm happy to draw those characters, and I love to draw them. I'm actually drawing something that's not announced yet that I've never drawn before, and it's gonna be. I'm excited about it, that's for sure. But I know that there's gonna be some constraints, if you will, to it. So that part, it's to some degree, I may look at it as a challenge, or I look at it as somewhat of a challenge because now I can say, um, how can I make this still be me without the without the freedom that I would have doing my own stuff. So
Mhm. When you're working, do you need absolute silence, or do you have a background noise, or it depends on the part of the work, if it's the layout, or if it's the inks, etc.
oh, I have music and podcast on all day, man. It's funny though. I have a schedule. I don't know. It's just part of my. I don't know. It's my neurotic behavior where I have to listen to certain things certain times of the day. Like
Hmm.
I can only listen to. I can't listen to like rock or hip hop music in the daytime. It has to be at night. Like I listen to podcasts in the daytime because I think that's my most like concentrated time. It's like the regular work day. So I need to feel like, okay, with what I'm listening to or what I'm indulging in the background, um, it has the feel of some kind of productive aesthetic to it.
Hmm.
Whereas, music or whatever, it's so, um, it can be very relaxing. It can be very intense. And there's not a lot of, it's more emotional. It's not any kind of, cognitive, process or whatever. It's mostly just me trying to feel my way through something or whatever. So if I put on some Wu-Tang Clan or something, it is because I am drawing some crazy splash page and I just got to, throw ink all over the place. So it's emotional.
Yeah. So you adapt the music you listen to the kind of scene you're drawing. I mean, you try to apply the Olivier Coipel told me about this. I don't know if you
Yeah.
saw it, but he told me he adapts what he draws to a playlist that he fabricates. Epic, he needs a big soundtrack. A romance, he goes for French classic, classics music from the 19th century. Do you do that too? You adapt, I need crazy, so would you go with in between brackets crazy music, or how do you adapt it?
Um, Somewhat, yeah. I can go with more thematic um, um, music and instrumentation based on what I'm doing. But a lot of it is just based on my mood. If I just feel like I'm about to do a double splash page and it's going to be crazy, whatever action, what makes me amped for something like that,
Hmm.
and that's what I would play.
So the music is a motivation tool.
Yeah, it's like working out.
Yeah.
You're gonna you're gonna put the workout music on. This is kind of like I have that in my drawing as well. It's like my drawing music, my workout drawing music.
Hmm. And I know you've heard this question a lot of times, but I'm going to do it again. For you, storytelling, what kind of music it is? Is it rock and roll? Is it jazz? Or is it a symphony?
It honestly depends on what I'm working on. I know that's kind of a cop out. I
Yes,
think
it's you guys always give me the same answer. It could be all depends,
it could be
except
all.
except for the Brits. The Brits, they all say it's punk.
Yeah,
All of them.
I can believe that. I can believe that. Honestly, if you want to go there, there's you kind of omitted one that I think for me, I think it's hip hop.
Yeah.
Um, Simply because like the Brits sharing about it being punk, they kind of derive from the same origin.
Hmm.
Um, Came from the ghettos from nothing. It's rebellion. It's against the establishment. Um, and it was communal.
Hmm.
Um, it was communal and and just a just a brash, raw statement, being presented. And I think, and honestly, I know a lot of, especially in the early incarnations of hip hop, punk was right there. They would go to the same, clubs and bars, and the scenes were happening roughly around the same time. Just from what I studied in some of the documentaries I've been watching. So it's kind of like that, and I'm coming from the other side of the tracks. Punk is on one side, I'm on the other side.
Yeah, Scotty Young gave me the same answer. He said,
"Oh, he did. Okay.
He's a huge hip hop guy, and he was like, "Nah, you're missing one. It's it's the rawness of the hip hop. That's comics are raw. Comics aren't.
Right.
You want to think about the complexities of a movie. Of course, comics can be as complex, but they are also raw. They're really intimate. They are, as we said before. I think comics are 1, 2, 3 people. So it's something that doesn't go to the brain trust that makes it cold. Comics are always hot because they are raw. Do you agree on that?
Yes. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, it goes back to how it's interesting, even, Scotty saying that, because that's kind of how we met. We met from hip hop. We met because of having that interest. And it honestly wasn't because of, he heard me listening to it, I heard him listening to it. We just saw each other's art, and we saw it in the art. We saw, oh, wait a minute, do you like graffiti? Oh, yeah, I love graffiti. Okay, great. So that means if you love graffiti, what music are you listening to? Obviously, it's got to be some, Public Enemy or something like that, and that's pretty much where that came from. So yeah, it's that's very raw. That's that music, especially then. It started the music that I listened to coming up when I was in middle school. Public Enemy. Imagine a middle school kid hearing something like that. It was so rebellious and so. It was Rage Against the Machine.
Yeah,
it's the reason why Rage Against the Machine exists. It was because of guys like that, groups like that. A few years after the Wu-Tang Clan, and just there, oh my God, it's how innovative they were, how they took, honestly, all of those guys, they took from comics. And that was the other thing that made it like, oh my God, they're talking about, the Fantastic Four and a lot of the groups, even predating all of those guys, their personas or their names or their groups were the Fantastic this, the Amazing this. I'm like, wait a minute, that sounds like, some acronyms that you hear in the comics. So that's the thing that really got me just like one of my lifelong dreams is to, and it's coming to fruition, is to work with some of these major icons and do some storytelling with them.
Nice.
Stay tuned for that. So
no, we are not. This is not that kind of show. We are not divulging any secret knowledge.
Right.
But at the same time, what you said just made me think one thing, which is full circle, right? Because from comics to hip hop, and then hip hop influences comics, so it's like full circle for you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I've had more. It was part of that full circle is being also recognized from the icons from that genre of music. To get it's really surreal when you get a direct message from Run DMC to be a part of some project that they're working on, or Wu-Tang Clan, or you name these folks, and it's like, wait a minute, do you realize who you are? And you're talking to me. It's super surreal, and very, very full circle.
Mm-hmm. Where does Eminem fit in that group?
I'm sorry?
Where does Eminem fit in that group?
Oh, where does he fit in that?
Yeah. If he fits at all.
He doesn't fit. I mean, he's
I
great.
Sorry, I always do. I always ask that same question, and the answer will be like, "You're a bastard. Don't ask me that."
Yeah. Maybe that's the question you should have. I should have said, don't ask that question. No, I have no
Okay, let's
issue.
moving on. Moving on. Moving
Let's
on.
move on. Let's move on. I have no problems with him. I think he's a brilliant artist and writer. I never really got into his actual music though. His writing is incredible. It's just the actual songs that he created. I never got into them.
Just just, I was asking just that because Eminem was for the other side of and the one I mean, for example, it's
Sure.
sad or fun if you want to call it, but I always say sad. That's the
Very.
way many people knew big brackets hip hop.
Yeah.
It was because of Eminem. He made it popular, and then when I talk to guys like you or Scotty or any other of my friends who are into hip hop, that's why I have I have knowledge before Wu-Tang Clan and Run DMC and many others, but most of the people didn't. They just thought hip hop was Eminem. So trying to, in a way, I guess, gotta be frustrating, right?
Yeah. Well, I honestly just don't pay attention. I can care. I have my circle. That's the great thing about this social media, right? It's like I don't go onto any sites that I'm not a part of. I don't feel like I'm a part of this community already. So I just, I don't waste a lot of time thinking about,
moving on.
Yeah.
Moving on. Just scratch next time. Don't ask about Eminem. So
I will say this. I think he respects the genre that I'm fond of. He always talks about it, which is that's the frustrating part, I guess. If anything, is like for him to have such knowledge, and he's a huge student of a lot of the genre that I appreciate. I just wish he would do more of that music. Like he honors it and he respects it and he knows about it, has vast knowledge of it. It would be nice just to hear him in that vein a little more. That's all.
That makes perfect sense. So you were talking about, before I touch on the forbidden subject, we were talking about the tools you used to work. Are you all still completely traditional, or you work in digital? So in some cases,
mostly traditional. I do digital. I have a Cintiq actually. I'm tapping on it right now. I love traditional though. It's just that tactile feel, getting the hands dirty. Sometimes it can be a little overwhelming, but it's most of the time very gratifying. The digital is just great, just to for editing, just to be able to enhance something, move something. Layouts are great for digital, but the actual work itself, traditional.
How much of, or if you're able, how much do you like, or how could you try to incorporate that graffiti culture into your comics?
I used to a lot. I think now it's more about what's effective in storytelling, not trying to shoehorn every time I'm trying to make this thing. It just has to work. There's something that I'm gonna be working on next year. It's gonna have a lot of that in there. A comic series, which I'm very excited about. Hopefully there'll be some announcement about the creative team and all that stuff this summer. But I feel like the more it just has to be natural. It has to feel natural, not forced.
No. But I was asking exactly because of that. This is your culture. This is what is a part of you. So I'm not talking about forcing it. I'm talking about how to incorporate yourself, your voice, which is also that one, into the art.
Yeah, I think like I would even use the example of Bitterroot. I think there are things I was more the expressions, the attitude, in the characters, in the storytelling. That the attitude part, I would say yes. The literal sense of, and what I mean by attitude, I mean the 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 push and pull of shapes and design and viewpoints, camera angles. That's very graffiti influence.
Mhm.
But that's also anime influence, right? That's also a lot of European artists that I study and follow. They're into things of that nature as well, whether they're conscious of hip hop, graffiti, or what have you. I think they all kind of just feed off of one another. It's very
Mhm.
symbiotic, I guess.
Yeah.
They're influenced from one another. So that's what I meant by. Uh, I was thinking more from the literal sense of literal graffiti, that kind of thing. But no, it in terms of the attitude and character and feel, motion, yes, that's in every page pretty much.
Mhm. You mentioned anime and manga. How much of an influence has it been to you, and what creators can you mention in terms of manga that influences you, or that is still you're still reading?
Um, Honestly, when I say anime and manga, I'm just saying overall.
Mhm.
There's no one. I just recently started um, looking at uh, Otomo's works. Actually, I got one here, and oh, I'm sorry, visual aids. Not only Otomo, Shiro uh, Masamune.
Masamune Shirow, yes.
I started looking at this again. I don't
Hmm.
know if you can see the. I just recently picked this up, and I was like, "Wow, this has a lot of things here that I used to really be into." And I don't. Again, the nostalgia is coming um, out the woodworks here over the last year. Everyone's looking back and collecting old comics and toys, and I started grabbing old manga, and that was one of them. So I'm looking at his works, especially for this new thing that I'm going to do, um, this other creator-owned thing.
Hmm.
So trying to play around with some of that stuff.
Hmm. You just mentioned you're doing another career on. Are you going to go more into, I mean, doing more and more career on and less work for hire, or you are still going to try to do a bit of both? Because there's always that dream project, right?
Well, yeah, I think yeah, my plan is to do both. Like I said, there's a project that I'm going to do right after Bitter Root is done. Um, full, not full circle, but full scoop, I guess. Bitter Roots is ending here really soon. Well, at least this major arc is ending. We're going to take a break, and I'm going to go off and do this mainstream thing. Um, and then right after that, the creator-owned thing, where I'm going to write it and draw as well.
Hmm. So your plan is to keep doing both?
Yep, that's the plan.
Hmm. Um, and in terms of the, let's go back to storytelling for a second. How important it is for you? How they just thought another question to ask before that one.
Okay.
How important are page turns for you?
Oh, they're very important. I like even when I'm working on Bitterroot, I think that has really helped me understand and appreciate the page turn. Um, Trying to make sure I don't spoil this. There's something that happens in one of the issues where the page it there was a scene that was happening on the same page, and I found a way to break it down a little more to where you can get that nice reveal or that that moment where a character's um, his moment of truth, if you
Mhm.
will, comes to fruition. I've made that the page turn. I just felt it would be a lot more impactful, and so far it's worked. That was exciting because that was the first time that I literally took, David's and Chuck's script and turned it around just a little bit, not the whole script, but just that scene. I'm like, okay, move this here, move this there. I literally reconfigured, you know, a 2-page spread and made it 3,
Mhm.
not 3-page spread, but 2-page spread
Yeah.
and then another page to go along with it. Um, but that was exciting. So the page turn is definitely a big deal to me, more so now than ever.
How much do you like to do that? To take the pieces of a puzzle, which can be the script in this case, and reshape the puzzle so it looks different without losing the essence of what was in the script.
I don't do it a lot, but I like the freedom to be able to do it. That's part of why the creator-owned thing.
Mhm.
I don't know if I could get away with that necessarily with the big two scripts or anything. Sometimes, maybe, I don't know, but it also depends on the writer too. The writer that there are certain writers that I work with. They allow me, hey, if you feel like you need to, you know, and that's the great thing about David and Chuck. They're really good at being open to change. But again, we're creators in this together, so to some degree, that's kind of that was established from the very beginning.
Mhm.
But it's also encouraging to know that you know really well established writers are humble enough to say, hey, if you don't like the way this is panning out, by all means, give me your input and we'll make it work.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, because in a way, I always say the same thing. I guess you've heard it many, many times, which is that for me, there shouldn't be writer and artist credit. In this case, it should be storytellers, because from their ideas, in this case, David and Chuck, and your ideas, it's never going to be exactly as they had in their head. It's never going to be exactly as what you had in your head. So you guys
right,
create a third entity, who in the end is the storyteller, right?
right, yeah, that is literally. It's funny that you even say that because I think it took us by issue 7 or 8. That's when we realized that we're gonna have to be okay with it, because one has one vision, one has another, and then myself. So we 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 learned how to just coexist within that space to know that this third entity is going to be the story. It's not going to be your story, my story, or it's this story. And that's the thing that's fascinating is that seeing it play out, it and getting the feedback from fans is really is so surreal because it's like, wow, we really just kind of threw everything against the wall, and what came down was the actual, like you said, the third, the actual story, the fourth entity. There's 3 of us, and then the story.
Hmm.
And there's things that we had initially in in our there were story arcs or character directions we wanted to go, and we tried to establish, or we thought we were going to go at an issue, the first issues, and it's not even anywhere close to that now. It's something completely different. These characters say, nope, we're going over here. There's nothing you can do about it. Just enjoy the ride. And
Hmm.
that, and that's a very uh, it's just it's such an incredible learning experience, just learning that, your stories are gonna go where they're gonna go, and you have to trust that. You have a beginning, you have an end, and everything in the middle is up for fair game. You know.
That's also something I was going to ask is how much of that going with the flow in a way makes you guys change the story. I mean, I'm guessing you guys had a beginning and an end. You know, you already knew how it was going to end.
Right.
Not exactly, but because it flows, but you know the main points. But how much of the middle, let's say the second arc, has changed because of that relation between you guys? You know, of the back and forth.
Man,
I don't even
yeah,
know.
yeah. There are things. Honestly, there are things in there that are better for sure.
Mhm.
And I don't know. I don't know if it's because we didn't expect for it to go in that direction, or is it because it's just better? You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah, absolutely.
we sometimes you can have an idea of, oh, I want my character to end up in this space. You write it, and it doesn't flow the right way, and you rewrite it, and then you start poking holes in it. You see how many holes are in this whole character plot, and you're just like, oh, this is not going to work. And you try to fill those holes, and next thing you know, you realize it can't work. So you end up doing something else. But when you do something else, it's not what you originally had, but it's better.
Mm-hmm.
So you're kind of in this weird, you're in this conundrum where it's like, I really was excited about this other thing, didn't work out, but this is better. So you just kind of take a deep breath and you go back in. I guess that's the best way I can describe it. It's like you're not like, oh my God, this thing is so amazing, I can't believe it. But you're not like that. But you're not like, oh man, we don't know what's happening here. We don't know where we're going. There's nothing like that either. It's just in this middle ground. You just kind of just keep building this insane cake. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. Have you guys gotten to the point where you don't know whose ideas, you know, if this is your idea or Chuck's idea or Dave's idea, and you don't even care?
We don't care. I can say that, or at least we give the presumption that we don't care. There are certain things that we do acknowledge who came up with certain things. It has to be something pretty significant, right? Like I came up with the name Bitterroot, like that kind of thing. In terms of all the nuances of who's this character and where this character goes, I don't know. It is kind of, I know it's very symbiotic. It just kind of, is morphed into, different things. I think David came up with the what each serum, if you know the story of how to use these serums to infect, to cure these monsters and stuff like that. He came up with the idea of them being different colors, which I thought was brilliant. I was like, that's an awesome idea. Stuff that's pretty significant that makes, Chuck's and to Chuck's credit, he came up with kind of the overall premise of Harlem and his family. We didn't have a name. We didn't know where we were. It just sounded cool. Harlem with a family that hunts monsters during the Harlem Renaissance. That just sounds nuts. I think I'll go for it. And trust and plus we were in the right. It was the right time for it. Black Panther had just came out. We had that dude in the White House, and he was stirring up all kinds of nonsense. So that that kind of built up a lot of anxieties, and so people were feeling very. There was a lot of anxieties and frustrations, and we knew we needed to do something. We felt like we needed to do something creative to at least bring about some kind of contribution that's gonna, make an impact in a good way.
Yeah. How important is for you as a storyteller to use pattern recognition? I mean, the old story, that when we're in the caves, you heard a bush rustling. So okay, there's probably an animal there. Let's go away now, or it's probably gonna eat us. So same thing. How important is for you to not complete the details and to let the reader's mind, to complete it, to recognize things. To not overdo the work and to let your reader be a big part of it.
That's part of that growth in storytelling. Learning when to pull back, when to spell it out. But I think the actual pulling back is the thing that is very it's the thing that I started to really understand and tap into over the last few months, to a year. So yeah, I love that. I love the like between the page turn. Sometimes it's a little bit of both. Where the page turn and that moment where you just kind of leave it hanging. It's left up to you. So the page turn and that can be the same thing sometimes.
What's the storytelling trope that you avoid like the plague?
I don't know. I guess
or that you try to not repeat too often. Let's say that.
Right. Yeah, I would say I think it's not even so much. Well, I guess it is a storytelling
or composition. It's any of those.
Yeah. It's somewhat of a. I try to not do splash. Everything doesn't have to, have overlapping panels, and I try to open it up every once in a while where it's this gutter, just traditional panel to panel, just to show that, I can do it and it can still be interesting. So not feeling compelled that I have to make this thing the most earth-shattering composition ever. Just make sure that it's solid storytelling and be comfortable with that. It's part of that pulling back too, I think.
Are you part of the school of thought? I am part of that school of thought. Just saying in advance that when you do a story overlapping, there has to be a reason behind it, not just because it looks. Oh, that looks cool.
It looks cool, right?
That was the 90s. Yes, maybe in the 90s people did it because again, style over form. But here we're talking. We are not in that era anymore, right? There's got to be a reason to make it happen.
Right. I think subconsciously, I'm like that, but I find myself getting into certain scenes, and it kind of feels like, okay, let's make a decision to do this overlap thing and see what happens. Just look at it and see if it makes sense. Does it, and if it does, I leave it. And so yeah, I kind of just go with a lot of it is just feeling, more than anything.
This is what we discussed before, right? About the graffiti and the culture. There's many things that your gut. That again, your personality, your voice. We're going back full circle again. Your voice, your personality is telling you, your gut is telling you where to go more than your brain, right?
That's right. Yeah, I definitely attribute to, from coming from that whole, train of thought and those aesthetics, is that graffiti, it's raw, energetic, but it also has design and it has and it's intentional. There's certain things that's there, and it's there because that's where it should be, or they want it to be. Placement, composition, those things of that nature.
That's a great point what you just made about design and composition being involved in there, because people doesn't think in those terms about hip hop or graffiti. They just think about the painting on the wall.
Yeah, no, it's
and there's a lot more involved in that, right?
Right. I mean, you look at even the great artists of that time. They had sketchbooks. They would do composition and layout. And they would problem solve what works, and those things are awesome. I have a book on the shelf, and sometimes I'll open that and I'm like, wow, these guys really were thinking like us. They were storytelling with graffiti.
Yeah. I just realized we've been talking for an hour and 30 minutes, so you probably need to go back to work on your life.
This is a different time for me. Thank God I'm done with my latest deadline. I got some covers to do today, but
but it's 12:30. That's not like in Spain when we eat at 2 p.m. That's normally your lunch time, right? So I don't want your wife to come back to. I saw her behind that door a few minutes ago.
You saw that? I tried to like.
No, I saw you try, but it was fine. It was fine. I don't want her to just come in and yell at me, saying, "Can you see it?" So one last one, and I'll let you go if you're fine with it. Is there any stories? Twofold question: is there any stories that you stopped yourself from telling in comics because you felt you weren't ready, you weren't mature enough? And the other side of that question, if that ever happened, do you know that story is going to happen sooner or later? That it's there, it's here. Like that story is going to come out before I retire or die because it's a part of me.
Wow, that's a great question. As a matter of fact,
it's something that you can't announce, but
it's the project that the creator own thing that I'm going to write. So it's and I thought about it. I was writing down some ideas. A friend of mine was like, he was saying to me, he's a well-known writer. He said, you need to write down every time you have a thought. You need to have one of these little ledgers or whatever, and just jot it in there. And I had a thought, and this thought was something that was pretty personal. I don't think I've talked to anyone about it. It's nothing like oh my God, like something you need to go back to someone but it was still something that happened, and I didn't realize how much it affected me until I thought about it. Because I started tapping into that world of growing up and all those things, and once you open that door, it's kind of like now that door is open, so stuff is going to continue to fall out of the closet, if you will. And that thought came into my head, or that memory, and I jotted it down. And as I was jotting it down, I started thinking, I'm like, how am I going to illustrate this? And then I had the idea of what I'm going to do, and I got emotional to some degree because it's like, wow, I guess it really affected me. So it will be told, I think. Goes back to storytelling, right? I may have it down now, but it may not work for the story once it starts to come together. But we'll see.
So there's the future that you guys have to look for. So anyway, thank you so much, Sanford, for being here. It's been a pleasure and an honor. So
thank you.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
And to all of you watching, you've been really quiet today. That's good. Don't interrupt us. To all of us watching, we'll be back on Wednesday with Spanish artist and writer Pedro Cifuentes, and on Friday with an editor that Sanford knows very much, Jake Thomas from Marvel. So if you want to bad name him, do it now.
Tell Jake I said hello.
So thank you so much, everyone, and we're off in 3 hours. Again, be decent, wear your mask, and help people. Okay, so we're off in 3, 2, 1.